The rain had just stopped when she stood in front of the cafe window, staring at her reflection through the fogged glass. Her lipstick was smudged, her hair slightly damp, and her eyes, those trembling eyes, carried the weight of years she never lived freely. For a long moment she wondered if she should even step inside. She looked down at the small note in her hand, creased from nervous fingers, 6 p.m., Cafe Amore, see you there. Her heart pounded, not because of excitement, but because she didn't feel worthy of it, not worthy of being seen, of being chosen, of being loved. If you believe that kindness and second chances can heal even the most broken hearts, then please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Deep Feels, because sometimes a single act of love can change an entire life. Her name was Emily Carter, 31 years old, and once upon a time, she believed in fairy tales. She used to dream of a love that felt like home, not chaos. But life, cruel and unpredictable, had rewritten her story. 2 years earlier, she had walked out of a marriage that left her shattered. A marriage built on manipulation, where every kind word was followed by silence, and every promise ended with a bruise, whether on her heart or her self-worth. She had lost herself piece by piece until she could no longer recognize the woman in the mirror. Tonight was her first date since then. Not because she was ready, but because her best friend Hannah had begged her to try, to at least believe that good men still existed. She had laughed it off at first, but after weeks of convincing, she finally said yes to a man named Daniel Brooks, whom she had met at a community charity event 2 months ago. He was warm, funny, and disarmingly kind, but kindness scared her now. She didn't know what to do with it anymore. As she entered the cafe, the gentle sound of soft jazz and the smell of fresh coffee filled the air. Daniel was already there, sitting by the window, a small smile lighting up his face when he saw her. He stood immediately, his eyes soft but curious. He wore a navy blue shirt with sleeves rolled to his elbows, his posture confident but relaxed. "Emily," he said warmly, and she forced a smile. They talked, slowly at first, about work, hobbies, and how they both hated the idea of pineapple on pizza, but beneath her laughter, Emily kept feeling this ache, a quiet reminder that she didn't belong here. When the waitress brought their drinks, she looked down, fiddling with the spoon, her voice barely a whisper as she said, "I don't deserve this date." Daniel blinked, unsure if he'd heard right. She tried to smile again, to turn it into a joke, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her. That's when he leaned closer, the world around them fading into silence. His voice, calm and low, carried something she hadn't felt in years, gentle certainty. "Then it's my honor," he whispered, "to prove you do." Something inside her cracked, not in a painful way, but in a way that let light in. For the rest of the evening, Daniel didn't try to fix her, he just listened. He made her laugh without expecting anything in return. He told her stories of his childhood, of getting lost at a county fair, of how he still called his mom every Sunday just to hear her laugh. It wasn't grand gestures that night. It was simplicity, presence, and the quiet promise that maybe, just maybe, she could trust again. Over the next few weeks, they saw each other often. Walks in the park, coffee on rainy mornings, movie nights where they didn't even watch the film, just talked until the sun began to rise. But healing wasn't linear. There were days Emily withdrew, days she canceled plans without reason, days when the ghosts of her past whispered that Daniel would leave too. Yet he never did. One evening, as they sat by the lake, Emily finally told him everything. About the years of walking on eggshells, about the man who broke her confidence, and about how she had spent so long believing love was supposed to hurt. Daniel didn't interrupt. He didn't pity her. He simply reached out and took her hand, holding it with the steadiness of someone who saw her, not as broken but as becoming. "Emily," he said softly, "love isn't supposed to make you smaller. It's supposed to remind you who you were before the world made you forget." For a long time after that, Emily couldn't speak. Tears fell silently as she looked out over the shimmering water, realizing that for the first time in years she felt safe. Not just with him, but with herself. Still, old wounds have a way of testing new beginnings. One cold December evening, Emily received an unexpected message from her ex-husband. He wanted to talk. Her hands trembled as she read the words. The old fear returned, the one that made her chest tighten and her confidence collapse. against her better judgment, she met him in a crowded cafe, just to get closure. But closure rarely comes that easily. He was charming, remorseful, and manipulative in the same familiar ways. He told her she looked healthier, that he missed her laugh. And for a fleeting second, the comfort of the familiar made her doubt everything again. When she returned home, Daniel was waiting on her porch, holding 2 cups of hot cocoa. He noticed her pale face instantly. "You saw him," he said quietly. She nodded, guilt washing over her. "I just wanted answers," she whispered. Daniel didn't get angry. He just set the cups down and said, "Emily, you don't need his permission to move on. You don't owe him your healing." Then, after a pause, he looked into her tearful eyes and said, "But you owe yourself the chance to start again, with someone who sees you." It was that night Emily finally realized what love should feel like. Not fireworks, not perfect words, just presence, just safety, just someone who chooses you even on your worst days. Months passed, and Emily began to change. She started painting again, something she hadn't done since college. Her laughter returned, unrestrained, real, and free. The walls around her heart began to fall one by one, not because Daniel tore them down, but because he gave her a reason to open them herself. One spring morning they went hiking in the Blue Ridge Mountains. The air smelled of pine and wildflowers, and the valley below glowed with sunlight. They stopped at a cliff overlooking the forest, where Daniel pulled something from his jacket pocket, a small locket. Inside was a photo of them from their first date, both laughing over spilled coffee. He handed it to her with a shy smile. "For the days you forget," he said, "that you deserve happiness." Tears welled in her eyes as she whispered, "Why are you so kind to me?" Daniel smiled, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. "Because once, someone believed I didn't deserve happiness either, and they were wrong." In that moment, under the vast sky, Emily realized this wasn't a fairy tale. It was something better, real, imperfect, and beautifully human. They didn't rush into forever. They simply took it one day at a time. There were still moments when Emily felt undeserving, when old insecurities whispered that love like this wouldn't last. But every time, Daniel reminded her through actions, not words, that she was worth showing up for. One rainy afternoon, nearly a year after their first date, Emily returned to the same cafe where it had all begun. She sat by the same window, watching droplets trace paths down the glass. Daniel arrived a few minutes later, carrying a small bouquet of daisies, her favorite. As he sat down, she smiled softly and said, "Do you remember what I said to you that night?" He chuckled. "You said you didn't deserve that date." She nodded, her eyes shimmering. "And you said it was your honor to prove I did." Daniel leaned in, smiling that same gentle smile. "So, did I?" Emily took his hand, squeezing it. "Every single day, if this story touched your heart, if you believe love can heal what was once broken, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to Deep Feels for more stories that remind us what it means to feel human again. And before you go, comment below. Do you believe everyone deserves a second chance at love? Emily never knew where life would take her next. But one thing was certain. She no longer doubted her worth. And sometimes, that's the truest form of love. Not someone who completes you, but someone who helps you remember you were never incomplete to begin with.